Austin, good to see you. We're going to talk through the 6 critical risks that could derail your retirement. When it comes to retirement planning, it's not just about saving enough, it's about preparing for the risks that could undo all of your hard work. So, today we're going to break down the top 6. Number 1 is sequence risk. Can you explain this one, please?
Yeah, really the easiest way to think about sequence risk is, do we have good returns at or early on in our retirement, or do we have bad returns? And by that, I mean highly positive or highly negative, right?
Mm,
And I think a lot of times we think of the game of returns as a game of averages, but in retirement during the distribution phase, that is simply not the case. The average rate of return does not matter. I'm going to say that again. The average rate of return does not matter. It's a matter of when these rates of returns occur when we are in the distribution phase. Again,
yeah.
do we have bad rates or good rates of return early on in retirement plays a big role in how long our money will last.
hmm And just to explain what people are looking at here, this investor blue versus investor green. They had the same pot of money, just the returns are flipped.
That's right. That's exactly right. We can see here again, both average 4% in either case. But really,
Yeah.
what is more important is, again, investor B to the right, the green investor, bad rates of return early on. Investor A to the left had good rates of return early on. But the
Yeah.
average is exactly the same with a very different outcome.
Yeah, that really is scary. You have no control over what the market does. All right, so now let's talk through withdrawal rate risk. I think a lot of people are familiar with the 4% rule. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Withdrawal rate risk is simply, right, how much of our portfolio as a percentage are we withdrawing each and every year?
Mm,
And many folks use that 4% rule as kind of the golden rule of thumb, if you will. And there's nothing necessarily or inherently wrong with that, but I would caution folks to consider it's much more nuanced than just saying I can withdraw a static 4% each and every year for the next 30 years,
right.
accounting for inflation,
hmm
because interest rates change. Inflation will change, right? So maybe your expenses go up or down. Market returns will fluctuate. So there's a whole host of issues and other factors that we need to contend with. And just understand that we want to make sure we're flexible within that withdrawal rate
Right.
calculation, right? We're adjusting it each and every year, perhaps up, perhaps down some years based on all of the other factors in our retirement plan.
Good point. All right, next we have healthcare and long-term care. And just to remind people who are watching, 7 out of 10 people will need long-term care at some point. And when we take a look at the average annual cost projected out to wrong visual here, projected out to 2043, that's going to cost you anywhere from $124,000 to $211,000.
Yeah, this is a really staggering statistic.
Yeah.
This is hard for me, even as a financial planner, to wrap my head around some days. Most of us, good Lord willing, will not need long-term care in the next 10, 15 years, but perhaps it could be 20 years until we need this type of care. And looking at the numbers, today versus what they'll be in 20 years, as you can see, this is a significant burden for many folks. So we need to ensure that not only we have a plan in place should this need arise, but also know the effects on the rest of our retirement assets and plan. If X happens, what does my retirement plan look like? We
hmm
need to have answers to those questions.
hmm Number 4, taxation.
Taxation is a big one. Essentially, this risk simply looks at what happens to our retirement plan if tax rates increase, and what does my asset location look like, right? Do I have a strategic mix of taxable, tax deferred, and tax free assets going into retirement? Because by having that tax diversification, as we call it, it much more effectively allows us to control that future tax liability by having different buckets we can access and withdraw funds from.
hmm Next, we have the silent thief in the night, inflation.
Yeah, inflation is a biggie, and I would argue if you have any sort of retirement plan or projection and it does not account for inflation, you don't have a retirement plan at all,
Right.
because
Right.
that is how important it is. We all know from our own experiences, you go back 10, 15, 20 years, virtually everything costs less. You look forward 10, 15, 20 years, it's a virtual certainty everything will cost more. So we need to factor inflation into our retirement plan projections, Otherwise, we're really fooling ourselves and making the picture look much more rosy than perhaps reality will be.
Mhm.
Accounting for inflation is really a crucial piece to any properly designed retirement plan.
Right. And last, we have the risk multiplier, longevity.
Yeah, I don't like to view longevity as a risk in and of itself, but the reality is it sort of is. And you
Yeah.
just use the verbiage risk multiplier, which I think is so perfect to view longevity through that lens, right? It's a good thing, right, that folks are living longer. No doubt about it. We all want to be around as long as we possibly can. However, we know that if we're around longer, all of these other risks that we've already discussed we have to account for extra number of years, right? So it really enhances the risk to the overall retirement plan in kind of an exponential fashion, not even really a linear fashion. So it's really important that we do have that retirement plan in place and we're stress testing against these things, longevity
Mhm.
being perhaps the most important, right? What happens to my retirement plan if I live 3, 5, 7 years longer than what we have modeled in? And
Mhm.
then having, again, those answers to those questions can allow us to rest easy at night knowing I have the answers.
Right. Well said. I mean, talking this through with you, Austin, kind of underscores the fact that you live in this world. You know about all of these risks. You create financial plans to account for them, which is why it's so important to have that plan. So, if somebody wants to sit down with you to talk through these risks, make sure that they are part of their financial plan, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, you can give us a call at 919-322-4113 or shoot us an email at info@patriotwealthnc.com.
Great. Austin, thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.